What's up, everybody? My name is Jacob Hardison, and today we are going to continue our racer rebuild series, and we're going to go over how to clean your car today. Let's get straight into it. All right, before we get started, let's go over some materials we're going to want to have on hand. I like to have a drill and hand driver, an assortment of hex bits and nut drivers, turnbuckle wrench, an X-Acto knife, a wheel wrench, pairs of pliers, some microfiber towels, simple green. I'll also be using an air compressor during this, and then of course our nice dirty car. All of these can be found at adrenalinrcracing.com. Now that we know what we need, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do, of course, is just pull the body off. And normally at this point, this is when you would go ahead and pull your shocks off. This would be your 5.5 nut on the top, and then a lot of times it'd be a 2.0 on the bottom, but we already did that in a previous, so we are all good to go. It's already done. So let's start taking off our front end. I'm gonna start on the top side here. Gonna grab my 2mm in this case, and I'm just gonna go ahead and detach our steering. And then you'll wanna set your screws off into a safe place, that way you know where they go. Set that one there, and we'll pop that off, and now our steering rack is nice and free. From this point, we should be good to flip the car over. So I'll show you on this car, we're gonna have 4 screws on the front that is holding our front clip on, and then we're going to have some steering post screws and some chassis brace screws. So I'm gonna go ahead and get those pulled out, and again, you're gonna wanna organize these, so that way you know where they go when you put the car back together. I also want to note, this is when you could use your X-Acto blade to go ahead and clean out screw heads if they have dirt in them. And from here, we should be able to just pull our front end off. And this is what we're going to focus on today. So I'm going to set our chassis off to the side. So now that we have our front clip in front of us, we're gonna go ahead and first take our differential out. I'll disconnect the sway bar end links first, and then we'll pull off the actual main cover. And now we have our gear cover off. You'll see in my case, I'm going to have 2 top, 2 in the middle, and then 2 on the bottom. This will vary from car to car, but generally you're gonna pull just this front little bit off of your main gearbox here. So now we'll set this down, and we'll pull our differential out. Now, I won't be going over any rebuild stuff today because we did that in the previous video, but it will be that same process. For right now, just gonna set that again to the very back. Now that we have just our main front clip itself, because of the way I like to do it, I'm going to pull out all the bearings. That way I don't have to worry about getting simple green on them and potentially destroying the internal grease. If you do get a bunch of simple green on your bearings during cleaning, then you can go ahead and re-oil them. But to keep my life simple, I'm gonna go ahead and just pull them all out. We'll start with our pinion screw here in the back, which is going to pull out our front pinion gear, and then we can pop the gear case bearings out, and then I'll also go ahead and pull the wheel axle bearings out. From here, now that you have your pinion bearings out, you can go ahead, use your nut driver to hold your hex, and you can loosen the set screw, drop the pin, and pull your axles out. And from here, we can pop these bearings out. I will say a lot of times they're going to need some gentle persuasion, but they will come out after some attempts. All right, now that our main bearings out, we can also pull our steering rack bearings out. For me personally, I leave them in. I'm not as worried about them. Plus, I like to make sure that my steering posts stay in the exact location that they'll key straight into the chassis. But you can go ahead and pull those out if you'd like. But we now have our case bearings and our axle bearings out. From this stage, we can either go straight to cleaning, or you can go ahead, inspect your bearings, make sure they're all good, make sure their seals are in good shape. So for example, this one feels pretty gritty, so I'm probably not gonna reuse that one. Same with this guy, and this one had a seal pop off. So in this case, I've only got one that I can actually really reuse up there. You can also check your pinion gear bearings, which in my case, they are all good to go. So we'll go ahead, we'll move out to the air compressor here in a sec, and I will go over how I use that. If you do not have access to an air compressor from this point, you can take your microfiber towel, spray some Simple Green, and then you can start doing a hand clean on all of this. And then you can also use your 1.5, 2.0 bits to then get into the little nooks and crannies. Because of all the nooks and crannies, that's why I like using the air compressor. So I'll go ahead and stop here, and I'll meet you guys out at the air compressor. All right, so now that we're out here, all we're going to do is use the Simple Green, spray it onto the car, and then use the air compressor to blow off the Simple Green till we get it nice, dry, and as clean as possible. And you'll just repeat this until everything is clean. All right, so now that we're back inside from the air compressor, we can take just another clean microfiber towel and just go through and just do a general final cleanup of things, any sort of Simple Green that maybe the air compressor missed, or a lot of times the grease inside the case doesn't want to come out with that. So you can go ahead, stick your rag in there, get that cleaned up, and just do a final pickup of anything that it missed. After that, I'll go through, we'll clean off our axles and get those guys ready to put back in. And now that everything's cleaned up, we can go ahead and start our reassembly. What you did probably notice that I didn't say before is when I disassembled, I made sure to keep my axles on the same side as they came out because they are worn into that side. So that is an important thing to do just for good policy. That way everything goes back where it came from. So now I'll go ahead, we'll throw our pinion gear back in, we're gonna get our axles thrown back in with some fresh bearings if they need replacing. And as we saw with mine, I do need to put some fresh ones in. So we'll get all this thrown back together and we'll be all set to go. One note I will make here is that this screw, if there's not Loctite on it from the past, I would definitely put some Loctite on here, and I like to crank it down pretty hard. That way you don't have to worry about it coming out, but we'll go ahead and get this reset. Also make sure that it's on the flat of your pinion gear. One more important note before we go ahead and put this away. You're gonna wanna make sure that this pinion gear can't move forward and backward at all. So when you mount your coupler, you wanna make sure that you have it as squeezed as possible because any play there can result in a damaged pinion gear or ring gear. Now that our axles are in, we can go ahead, put our differential back into its case. I went ahead and rebuilt this off camera, so we're set to go. And now we're completed with our clean and rebuild of the front end. So we can go ahead. I'm gonna put my wheel nuts on the axles just for good policy. That way I don't lose them. And we can go ahead, clean up our front bumper. From this point, definitely make sure that your sway bar end link screws are tight. I did forget to do that myself. And then you will be ready to throw this back on the car with those fresh shocks. From this point, because I do still have to clean my rear end, I'm not gonna put it back on, but that's just a backwards process of how you took the front end off earlier. And you'll wanna go ahead and throw some fresh grease on your differential here. I'll show that just so that way we don't cut anything out. And there you have it. A nice clean front end. Do some scrubbing on our bumper. And that is how you clean your front end. I hope that this has been helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, please feel free, leave them down below, and we'll get you guys taken care of. We hope to see you at the track soon.